Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
That's my question. I love it. So the pictures are taking a moment in time, saving them forever, and it'll change the next second. And so what I love about photography and taking a picture is that it freezes that moment in time, and in 5 years, 10 years, or some point down the road, you can look at that picture and bring back memories of that event and whatever it was that you took a picture of. So it's a snapshot in time, literally, and it can transport us back in time too.
Nice. Tim Eggebraaten, is that how I say your name?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Look, nice to meet you. You're in your some kind of office space of sorts, and behind you it says "I am, I can, I will." Very aspirational. Very kind of your energy is very like awake, full on. Here you are. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too. And it's a lot of it's a choice, right? I mean, our attitudes are a
Yeah.
choice. We can't control the stuff that's going on around us, but we can control how we show up. We can control a lot of that. We forget that sometimes, but so I try to embrace that, and I try to embody that motto: "I am, I can, I will." My mom used to tell us that all the time, and so she kind of
Oh wow.
drilled us into it, or drilled it into us at a young age, and just that whole attitude of, you know what, yeah, this is potentially a big challenge in front of us, but we're going to get through it. We are going to get through it. We can get through it. We will get through it. And so that's kind of how I take
Nice.
on all my challenges.
So where in the world are you right now?
Minnesota, Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, US of A. So kind of northwestern part of the state of Minnesota, and about 230 miles northwest of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and up in Fargo,
Right.
North Dakota.
So the episode just before yours happens to be with Brent Olson, who's also in Minnesota. So
Oh,
Minnesota
nice.
represent.
Woo! You know what that means? That means that this is the year the Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl.
Oh,
Minnesota
okay.
Vikings. Yep. We've never won a Super Bowl. Yeah. It's got to be one of these years.
Okay, so here's the photo. Okay, okay, so it's a group shot with a large family, not super huge, but okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 10 people, 2 kids, 1 cat.
Yeah.
Shot outside in the fall, maybe. It's really interesting colors, all muted, so not very hot day, so kind of a cool spring fall day. Everybody's wearing like green, khaki, orange. Everybody's looking at the photographer, smiling. Really good looking family,
Yeah.
really nice. Great moment. Okay, so it's called, yeah, you called it family.
hmm
So what's this all about?
I was actually taken this winter, and we've had a very mild winter this year. Usually there'd be snow and it'd be bitterly cold. And so we've had a mild winter, and it was taken around Christmas time where
Oh,
our
wow.
our whole family got together, and one of our sons, we have, my wife and I have 3 sons, and 2 of them are married, and the third one has a girlfriend, and she's in the picture also. And the youngest one and his girlfriend, for our Christmas present, gifted us a photography session.
Oh, nice.
That was one of our wishes, is to get the whole family together. It's very hard nowadays to get everybody together, and that was one of our wishes for a gift, would be somehow we could all get together and get a picture. And then we
Nice.
threw in the my oldest
The
son's
cat.
cat, so make it complete.
Nice. So this is also in Minnesota. This is all like,
Yep, that's our backyard. Yep,
oh, nice. So here's the thing. Like I set up this podcast. This is going to be episode 197.
nice.
I meet all these people. I believe I we lined up because your agent, you may have written a book, and so it's for me. It's like, who are these people that I'm meeting? Like, who are you?
Mhm.
So your energy is like direct. You're very switched on. You're like, yep, you're here. It's great. You send me
Yeah,
this photo of your family. Okay, so of all the things you could have picked, you chose a picture of a group shot of your family,
right.
right? So the big question is why?
Because they are my why. They are why I do what I do. And you asked me that question to start off this podcast about what does photography mean to you, and that encapsulates everything that I get up for in the morning, and that is just it in that picture right there with all of those personalities, and it'll change. We're changing every second, but at
Yep.
that moment in time, that was our family, and I love them all very much, and anything I can do to keep that family together and help them, and we all help each other. We're hopefully a little microcosm of what our society should be. Where we all have our strengths and our challenges, and but we help each other, we complement each other very well, and so uh,
Mm.
so that's that's a huge part of my life is that family of mine.
In between the lines of how people describe what's important to them,
Right,
I get to sort of notice certain things, right? So family is very important to you, okay? But
right.
also the choice of words, the fact that you have I am, I can, I will behind you. You're very action oriented. You even
Mm-hmm.
have it on your mug, right?
Well,
It's like a
yeah.
brand. It's a brand onto yourself.
Oh yeah.
Okay, what's your calling? So the previous guest, he's an author, so it's like okay, that's cool. But he is a farmer.
Hmm.
Okay, so what about you? Like what world of expertise or knowledge or whatever do you inhabit?
When I was in kindergarten, so about 6 years old, I knew that I was going to be a police officer. I knew it,
Oh,
no question in my mind. And I have three older sisters. I'm the only boy and the youngest in our family, but I knew I was going to be a police officer. And so I became a police officer as soon as I got out of college. And I was a
oh wow,
police officer for just about 28 years, 25 years with one department, and
wow,
became the chief of police for 5.5 years in
wow.
our town. So that was so. I came from a place of service, where I wanted to serve my
Yep.
community, and but then right before I retired from law enforcement, I was asked to speak with a larger police department and talk to their command staff and about my leadership journey, and I did. And I love music, so I brought my guitar down there and I shared some music and some stories. And so, right before I retired and left law enforcement, I found my second calling, and that was to
Mm-hmm.
speak, to share a message of positivity. I am, I can, I will. And to have that opportunity and the ability to share a message that yeah, things are going to be crappy sometimes and not fun, but we have to remember to look for the beauty around us, and we forget about that.
Nice,
We get so caught up.
nice.
So I've been blessed with two callings in my life: first law enforcement, and now speaking. And so as kind of a natural offshoot of my motivational and inspirational speaking, people kept saying, "You need to write a book, man." And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to
I
do.
don't know where to start.
Yeah, well, yeah. Where to begin? So I began writing a book probably 6 years ago, and just finished it, and it just came out, and tickled pink about that whole thing. And it just
Is that the name of the book?
the name of the book is called "Find Your Beat, Walk in the Rhythm of Life," and
Oh,
right. So I
nice.
use that rhythm and then that beat. As police
Yep.
officers, we walk a beat, and so it's kind of a mixed meaning, and but it applies to everybody. That hey, what's your rhythm? And in Hong Kong, what's your how are you going to find your rhythm? And people wherever they're at, we need to find that our own rhythm of life, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of static and a lot of noise when the in the media or our friend groups or at work, or we hear all that static coming in. So how do we filter that?
Hmm.
Not by burying our head in the sands and being ignorant, but how do we balance it all and find that harmony and that rhythm in our life? And so the book was kind of a natural progression. Yeah, just excited that, and I get these opportunities. I mean,
Right.
I just I pinch myself. It's amazing. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you back. Look, we're going to connect as human beings, right? So, first of all, we have many overlapping sections, in our lives, right? So, for me, I've spent 15 years working with a very kind of renowned business leader who really looked at what is the nature of service. And then, so when you say you spent 25 years in law enforcement,
Mhm.
I mean, that is a kind of calling or work or where you put your energy that is service oriented. And for most people, when they think service, they think customer service, right? That's the idea, the sort of the immediate sort of association. Whereas what we'd say is service is the energy you bring to each other,
Mhm.
right? It's all it is like service isn't necessarily commercial, but it's, for example, when you're an officer, your service is the energy between you and whoever you're talking to.
Right.
And we say that in a family, like I'm looking at this group photo of you guys, like you're all giving a service within your little network, your little tribe of people, and
Mhm.
even a toddler gives a toddler service. And
Mhm.
sometimes like a newborn service is like the worst, but that's exactly the service that that newborn needs to give. And as parents and as siblings, you give each other that service. So that's where I'm coming in, sort of in terms of how I'm interfacing with you.
Mhm.
And I'm not one to believe in fate and all this stuff, but in my biography, in my life, ups and downs, right now is a very challenging moment.
Mhm.
And here we are, we meet, and here's this really bright, activated, leadership sort of oriented fellow with I am, I can, I will. Look, great to meet you, Tim. Great to meet
Yeah.
you. This is great.
Yeah. Right back at you. I mean, there, and I don't think things happen by accident. I really don't. I mean, that's a big
Hmm.
part of my mindset is, somebody needs to hear something you're saying. And your podcast, I don't have any idea, and you don't know who's going to listen to it, and
Right,
so
exactly.
somebody having the worst day of what they think is the worst day of their life, and they're driving to work, and they put your podcast on the commute to work, and
Yep,
whoever your guest is, and your conversation that you're having with your guest, it may be exactly what that person needs to hear right at that time, and you can't control that.
exactly.
I can't control. We just keep showing up, and you keep
Yep.
showing up at early in the morning. So sorry to wake you up so early.
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. Look, Tim, these things go really quickly. We have to go. We have to leave your beautiful family. Great shot, and we will move on to the next photo. Oh, look at you. Okay, grandkids and book. Okay, so it's you have a great energy about you. Really, really great. And obviously, that's what people. So in the work that we talk about in terms of service,
Yeah,
we say that the power of attraction and pull really radiates, and that's what people are drawn to, right?
yeah.
So in this photo, I don't know if this is the professional photographer who got it, but it's a great photo of you sitting with your two grandkids, looking at books. Really bright moment in could be an office room. Yeah, it looks more like an office room than a kitchen. You're seated on the floor. One of your grandkids looks like he's 2 years old, and one is 3 years old, roughly. Yeah, great little moment.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say?
Well, that was taken by my daughter-in-law, and I had just received the first box of my books, and
Oh,
they live in Minneapolis. And so when my publisher sent me a message and said, uh, "I have your books," I said, can I come down and get them now? It's about a 3.5 hour drive for me.
Oh yeah.
And, but I was so excited. I was like a kid, waiting for that present, and so when she said they were ready, I jumped in the car and I drove down there. I picked up my books and I thought, well, I'm not going to open these. I'm not going to just open them by myself. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
with, and another one of my whys why I wrote a book is to keep my mom's legacy alive of I am, I can, I will. And then for those younger generations and my grandchildren, the oldest one is in the picture there. He's almost 4 and an avid reader, and they're reading books to him every day. Uh,
Nice.
and then the youngest one, the little guy, is 1 year old, and
Okay.
so that picture, the little 1 year old is clapping because he's all excited. I was excited,
Yep.
and the older one, we're ripping open the box, and so again, that picture taken with an iPhone, I'm assuming, just froze a really exciting moment for me
Mm-hmm.
personally and professionally. And then those kids, they keep growing like crazy. They're getting
Yep.
older every day, and so that's the moment that Grandpa opened the books, and
Mm-hmm.
so I want them to look at that. I want them to look at my book when they're teenagers and read about Grandpa's stories and Grandpa's challenges that he had, and how he got through different challenging times in his life.
Mm.
And so that's like, it was just a sweet picture that my daughter-in-law snapped at a really cool moment. And that's one
Yeah.
thing with photography nowadays. When we can search so readily our archives
Yep.
of pictures, it's just amazing. And to have that at our fingertips is so powerful.
Yeah. No, it really is. So you said that when you were 8, I think you said 8, you knew you wanted to be in law enforcement.
Probably even
Is that
6.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
6. Okay, 6. Yeah, yeah. So interesting. Like if we see things, life, whatever, as being kind of not exact mirrored copies, but as kind of cyclical repetitions.
Hmm.
So here, like in when you're 6 years old, sitting on the ground, looking
Hmm.
at whatever it is, toys, books, whatever, can you remember if there was a thing that really, like an object or something that really kind of personified this idea of becoming a police officer? Or
Vivid.
was it just the image? Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, no, and it was a picture. We were in Seattle, Washington, visiting my mom's cousin, and so I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my my mom's cousin's son, whom I've never met, but there was a
Hmm.
picture of him on the table, and he was in uniform. He was a Washington State police officer, and I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know who he was, but I just saw him in uniform. But I remember, like, wow, that's what I want to do. And at that,
Hmm.
the Vietnam War was still going on. It was just kind of finishing up, and so there was. I don't think we watched TV a lot as kids, but I remember images of the Vietnam War and when our soldiers were coming back and the protests that were going on and the uniformed police officers, and I just remember seeing a lot of that images in my
Hmm.
head, and when I saw he'd be a cousin of some sort of mine in uniform. It really, I thought that's what I want to do. He looked proud. He looked courageous. He looked strong. And I,
Hmm.
with just in a picture.
Yeah, and so in a similar way, you got your two grandsons here,
Hmm.
who their interface with their grandfather is like for them, all they know is, oh, their grandfather writes books,
Yeah.
and he just wrote this. So again, the title of your book.
Find your beat, walk in the rhythm of life.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so why don't you walk us through your book roughly? Like, what are the themes? What are you trying to achieve in the book? Like, what is the reader going to get?
My goal is when I'm speaking professionally and with the book and with everything, this this podcast, my goal is, yeah, I'm sharing my stories, but it has nothing to do with me. I want my goal is for the reader or the listener, or when I'm speaking, the people in the audience, to hear the stories of examples of mistakes that I've made, trauma that I've experienced, and how that shaped me and affected me. But again, that's not about me. So I want them to take those stories, plug it into their life, and to say, you know what? If this guy went through 28 years of a really potentially toxic environment, with always looking for the bad in people, and because that
Mm-hmm.
was our job, we look for what people are doing wrong, not right. And
Right. Right.
if he can do that, that's what I want to do. So the book has stories of people that have impacted my life, like my father, my mother. There's a guy named Norman in the book that just, at the time seemed like a random kind of a homeless individual, but he rocked my world. He just a kind and gentle man, and made me recognize that my rhythm was off, and I was really becoming toxic myself, and that it was
Oh.
us versus them, and everything was framed in that us, like my night shift partners, and them was everybody else. And I'm
Mm.
looking at our world now, and I see a lot of that us versus them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's political or countries or just our belief systems, we can really get wrapped up into that us versus them. And then
Mm-hmm.
so it's stories and it's techniques and tactics that I've used through my life that have been modeled for me. And in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, I've been studying them, like from not really I'm not a psychologist. I don't pretend to be, but more from, why do these techniques work? Like
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, or meditation. Why does meditation
Right.
work? And I came on to meditation very late in life, but that was a game changer for me.
Wow. Okay.
So a lot of these techniques, and again, it's a short book. It's like 132 pages. People are messaging me from around the world. It's really crazy.
Oh,
And they're
nice.
like, hey, I sat down and read your book in 2.5 hours, and they, and they're telling me what hit for them, and it's so surreal knowing that somebody in Germany might be reading my book, or
Mm-hmm.
in the United Kingdom, or maybe Hong Kong
Hong
someday.
Kong.
Yeah, you just, I mean, send me your address, brother.
I love it. Now, okay, just to not lose that for a second, you bump into this fellow named Norman. You
Right.
don't know him, I assume. You sort of met him. What what was the catalyst that created this sort of like change in thinking in you?
I think it was the timing of, I was really deep into that us versus them mindset, where I thought the world was against us, the few guys that I worked with on nights, and I thought everybody was against us. And when I met Norman, he thought he was in Detroit, Michigan, but he was in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, so it's about 900 miles
Wow.
apart. And and he was clearly confused, but he wasn't a danger to himself or anybody else. But he was,
Hmm.
I don't know if it was dementia, or I don't really know, but he was a little
Yeah.
confused, and but just this kind and gentle man, skinny, and so I just, all I did was I gave him a ride to a hotel and got him a hotel room for the night. We had a system in place for just for that. And
Yeah.
but as I was leaving, and he had these brown eyes that, a lot of people, when they're talking about somebody that's impacted them, a lot of people talk about this person's eyes. And Norman's
Hmm.
eyes were brown, and they were unlike anybody's. The way he looked at me was, nobody had ever looked at me like that before then or since then. But he was looking
Mm.
at me, and it felt like he was looking into my soul. And and as I was leaving, and this was late at night, probably 2 o'clock in the morning, and as I was leaving him in his hotel lobby area, he said, "Wait a minute." And I turned around and I looked at him, and he looked at me locked on with those eyes. And it was uncomfortable. It was like, it seemed like a long time, but I know it was just a few seconds. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, I want to remember the people who have helped me. And I had no response. I didn't know what to say. I just broke my gaze with him, and I went and I sat in my police car, and I started to cry. And I was not a
Mm.
crier. I never cried. And, but,
Mm-hmm.
at that stage of life, I was this tough protector.
Yeah.
And it struck me and it broke me down. And I remember thinking to myself, who have I become? Because that's
Right.
the guy that I felt like I was becoming was not the guy that my mom and dad raised, and not the guy that
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a police officer. But I was getting so crusty.
Mm-hmm.
But Norman, just by being himself, started to chip away at that crust of mine. And so I use his story a lot when I'm talking to people, that what seemed to be a happenstance contact, that
Yeah.
we met each other, never saw him again. I go in detail in the book where I found him later, but he had died, and I found his grave
Oh.
site, and that's a powerful story in itself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so here's this guy that I had probably half an hour, 30 minutes, of contact with. And I think about him almost every day. And this is, I don't even know how
Mm-hmm.
many years ago, it was years ago. But the power that we have on affecting other people's lives just by showing up, and our
Yep.
attitude, our energy,
Mm-hmm.
and not being that person that sucks all the excitement out of in a conversation, or,
Yeah.
just that,
Yeah.
because we all know those negative people too. But uh,
Sure.
And so I refer to, that person was a Norman, or if she's female, like a Norma, that
Yeah.
person really
Yeah.
affected me. And we can be Normans and Normas for other people.
Wow. Tim. So as you say this, delightful photo of you clapping hands, mirroring your one-ish
Yeah.
grandson,
Yeah.
sitting by your new book, which is very exciting. Who would have thought 30 years ago that you'd have written a book talking to some dude around the other side of the planet about Norman,
Right.
right? Like it's amazing.
It is. It's too much to wrap our heads around.
Yeah. Aw. Okay. I love these. Okay, so this happened in the this happens in the episodes all the time where I say, look, pick four photos. They're gonna frame what you want to talk about, and then I get these windows into people's lives, and it's a treat, right? So you're in a desert. Looks like I don't know which one, Joshua Tree. No, but it looks like some kind of desert in Arizona or something.
Yep.
Uh, in the foreground, you're making a selfie. You and I guess that's your spouse, your
It
wife.
is. Yep. My wife,
Very
Denise.
nice. Yeah, both looking at the camera, smiling. Not like a crazy, insane smile, but just like a nice, warm, friendly smile. Could be morning in the desert, slightly overcast. Big, beautiful. I don't remember the name of those cacti, the very tall ones. And she's holding up your book, Find Your Beat. Great promo shot, I have to say. Like, I applaud that. Very well done. So, okay, I can almost guess why you added this photo. So, why don't you tell the story?
Again, another why. My wife and I have been married 35 years in June, and we started dating like 8 years before that. So we've been together a long time. And
Wow,
so, yeah, that's a saguaro cactus in,
that's it. Yeah.
yep, in Mesa, Arizona. That's another, my wife is another big reason of why I get up in the morning, why I do what I do,
Yeah.
and why, all of that. And we've become such a good team. And so that was a promo picture. It was our local newspaper here wanted some pictures for an article they were running. And so we went out, and that's actually the draft copy of the book. So it's not even bound. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of excitement there with the book. And then sharing that, when I was writing the book and when it was all ready to go and we were going to submit it to the publisher, we both hit send together. You know, my wife and I
Oh,
did.
you guys are too cute.
But it's like, you know, I always say, you know, teamwork makes the dream work, and it's
Nice.
not a cliche. It's real, and it's so I wanted when you asked for four pictures that you know kind of fill in a lot of parts of our lives, and that's she's such a huge part. I could do 4,000 pictures of just her or her and I or whatever, and
Hmm.
she's a great mom, she's a great wife, she's a great grandma, and just
Yeah.
massive part of my life and couldn't do any of it without her. She's my glue and as many goof ups and mistakes as I've made, and she continues to stick with me and support me. It's just humbling and powerful.
No, for sure. I can see in your face. But there's this. I am very drawn to because I have that sensitivity and that sensibility of just recognizing authenticity in others, right? Because of course, like when you, if you don't think of it and don't notice it, then it's like you're like whatever. But I
Hmm.
happen to be the kind of person who hunts around for that,
Yeah,
and so in the image, it's a very authentic, genuine moment of you as a couple
yeah.
holding up the book. And then next to that is you in video talking about your relationship, talking about the energy between you two.
Hmm.
And again, it's like there's that authenticity and and it's so interesting that within a couple of minutes of talking to you, I was just like, okay, so the word choices and how you frame yourself, I am, I can, I will behind you in this
Hmm.
large sort of framed motto. Yeah, it's a very positive, constructive, action oriented sort of, I don't know, like philosophy.
Hmm.
And also that seems to be the book. Like of the all the books you could have written, this is the one that you put together,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
it's so you touched on this, and I think it's important for people to hear about the challenges and the failures because it's because we all have to push through those moments,
Yeah.
right? So if you had to pick one, and it doesn't have to be the most challenging or the most epic,
Hmm.
but like why don't you share a moment of failure and hardship that actually was a great lesson?
Yeah. That's a good question. So that was honestly probably the biggest barrier for me publishing this book was that because I was very personal in the book. And actually, when I sent it to a writing coach and he sent me 3 chapters back, and I sat on it for 4 days, and I thought, you know what, I don't even want a book. It was a good
Mm,
try. Let's not do it. But I was in such fear that what are people going to think? And so
yep.
when I was 12 years old, I started drinking alcohol. And,
Oh wow.
and I discovered through my writing process in the last few years that alcohol, my relationship with alcohol was, in my opinion and my belief, it leveled the playing field. I'm very introverted in a lot of ways, and when I would drink, then I could communicate with anybody. And
Hmm.
if I was in, and when I was a police officer, I'd go to events. I felt like I was out of place. Like I don't belong here. These people know way more than I do. But if I had a beer in my hand or a cocktail of some sort, it would level the playing field and I feel the confidence to go up and speak with anybody.
Hmm.
And then it just kept accelerating then the use of alcohol. Then it was a numbing agent, when
Hmm.
I would have uh, trauma at work and it just became more of, and I'm an entertainer. I do music and I'm a one man
Hmm.
band. And so a lot of my shows that I was doing, I was drinking during my shows and it just became what I thought was part of my personality. Like, well, this is what I do. I
Yeah.
drink. And
Yeah.
then I was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol about a year after I retired from law enforcement, less than a year.
Oh
And
wow.
and so here, the hypocrisy of all of that, that here I dedicated my life to arresting people for violating laws and getting drunk and driving and stuff. And here I was driving drunk, and
Hmm.
so that my relationship with alcohol, and it stopped that day. I mean, I stopped drinking that day, but and so I was thankful in the sense that I was able to just stop drinking. It wasn't like a physical addiction, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't even imagine people that do battle with physical addictions because I didn't have any withdrawals or anything like that. It was all in my head. And
Yeah.
I had people say, "Oh, are you still going to be funny?" Like when I'm doing music shows, I'm like, "I don't know. You tell me."
We'll see.
Yeah, come to my. But I thought it was part of my personality, or part of who
Yeah.
I was, and so separating them, like surgically separating alcohol from my shows and who I am, it wasn't nearly as tough as I thought it was going to be, and
Hmm.
so that was opening a lot of like pulling the curtains into our lives that I don't know if my wife was ready to like, hey, you're pulling back the curtains on your life, but it's
Hmm.
also pulling back the curtains on her life, and so we were both very apprehensive about that, and but again, and like so since the book has been out, I've had people say, you know what, thank you for being strong. And I'm thinking I'm
Hmm.
the weakest guy on the planet, uh,
Mm.
but by me being like vulnerable, I guess is one of the catchwords nowadays. But by
Yeah.
me being vulnerable and saying, you know what, hey, I am not going to throw any stones because I have screwed up more than anybody, and that's really given a lot of people opportunities then to say, well, if Tim Eggebraaten owns his mistakes and tries to do better the next day, maybe I can, and so that's like
Yeah.
my whole, again, it's not about me or my stories and nothing to do with me. But if I can share that part of me that from 12 years old to 50 years old, 51 almost, this relationship with alcohol, and if I can share that and if that helps somebody, well, I'm all in, that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what else is there?
No, it's great. It's totally great. And I think, I mean, as children, you're trying to figure out what is the recipe, what is the root, what is the formula that can help me cope,
Right.
right? And for some kids, if they're, surrounded by the opportunity to drink or the culture of drinking or whatever, or just stumble into that,
Yeah.
yeah, that can kind of take over.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, and it's a very common, it's an extremely common reflex for many people. And then that whole question of like, well, it's like, can I let loose without having that excuse or whatever of saying, well, I was drinking so I can be more, drinking makes me more extroverted.
Right.
Well, it's like, okay, now you have to be more extroverted without the alcohol, and
Yeah.
look, you can do it,
Yeah.
right? It was just like it was there all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't my identity. I felt like it was, but then some people feel like their career is their identity also. And
Hmm.
so I think we have to kind of keep flipping that mirror around on ourselves and like, well, who am I? What is my identity?
Hmm.
And I'm more than a retired cop. I'm a
Yeah.
husband, I'm a dad, I'm a grandfather, I'm a musician and an entertainer and author. I mean, we're all more
Yep.
than, but we do that as people. We see somebody else and we think we know everything about them just by where they're at, how they look, what they're wearing. If it's religious
Hmm.
material, you think, oh, I know everything about that person. We don't know squat. And
Yeah. And then through a happy accident, you happen to lock eyes, and you think, Norman,
right.
look at you.
Yeah, we have way more in common with each other than we have like differences, and we're all going to have
Yeah.
differences. And hopefully, it would be pretty boring if we were all identical.
Yeah. So, how about like, because there's one school of thought, if we're talking about motivational and leadership and guiding other people, is this idea that we're shaped by our wounds, right?
Mhm.
So you can have these great successes and you go, oh, that's great, but usually a success, you take it and you go, oh, that feels pretty good for like 15 minutes, and then you're like, you file it away. But a wound, a trauma, a
Mhm.
hurt, can sometimes really live on, right?
Right.
So is there a wound that happened early on as an officer that was almost a burden that you carried with you that eventually you thought, hey, you know what? I don't need that either.
In my frame back here, I have that I am, I can, I
Yeah.
will. And then there's a picture right there of one of my partners. And he was one of the first people we met when we moved here to this town. And he got hired on the police department shortly after I did. And about 10 months after I became chief of police, he took his own life. And so,
Oh, fuck.
so that was a trauma that so I did that what if game, like should I have seen something? We beat
Mm,
ourselves up when somebody dies by
mm-hmm.
suicide, and uh, and so that I wrestled with that a long time, where it was like,
Mm-hmm.
what did I miss? Was it something I said? Was it my fault? And all of these different pieces. So his death really took a lot of the wind out of my sails. It was like, what am I even doing in this career? And am I capable of leading this agency?
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, and as I repressed that, his, and then I discovered, probably 6 or 7 months after his death, I discovered that I'd had an entire career of repressing every single trauma. And I never talked to my wife.
Okay.
I never talked to my wife about any of that. And everything was, hey, okay. And I'd have another beer, and because I was always that guy that everything's sunshine and
Mm-hmm.
lollipops. And so his death, when I came to a realization that I probably wasn't right in my head, that I was seeing videos and I was having trauma that I hadn't dealt with ever. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of these, my 20 whatever years of police experience up until that point was all trauma undealt with, and so it was bubbling over. And so I went in, I saw a psychologist, and that's when I discovered mindfulness and meditation, and sitting with those images and those memories and not pushing them away, and dealing with
Mm-hmm.
them in a healthy way. And so I think that his death, again, the timing of it was never a good timing for it, and it just rocked me so hard that it's like, okay, well, now what? So
Right.
the ball's in my court. What am I going to do with it? And do I hit it back, or how am I going to handle this? And so that I am, I can, I will, proved very powerful. That what, and I'm not going to do it myself. You said it
Mm-hmm.
before. I mean, this whole community of life, we're not designed to do this by ourselves. And I reached out and I got help. Recognized first that, yeah, oof, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big first step, and then getting the help, and then following through with it and continuing with it. And so now it's a continual daily. Am I going to let things stress me out? And nobody's going to make me mad. You can't make me mad. You
Mm-hmm.
can't make me anything. I control all that. So
Yep. 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 Tim, you just ladled like a massive soup pot of knowledge.
my job, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next photo. I am, I can, I will. Boom. Okay. Great. So this is a photo made from within an audience in a I don't know, reception hall of sort. There may be 100 people in the audience seated at chairs and tables. It could be a seminar. Hard to know. On the stage, on the right side of the photo is a man wearing nice shoes and jeans, a jacket, holding up a guitar, standing there. I don't know if you're in the middle of a song. The audience is kind of all facing you, and it's an interesting. If you think about what that is, that's a really weird sort of moment where you have like a room full of 100 people. They're all looking forward at this one person with a guitar that's making funny sounds,
Yeah.
either coming out of his mouth or coming out of this object. and entertaining them. So, yeah. So this is either speaking engagement or you're just entertaining with a song. What is this?
Yeah, speaking engagement. And I think how you framed the questions in your email, like when I was selecting the pictures, I think it was, one of the frames was like what you're doing now, or what drives you now, or something. I don't remember how you
Hmm.
worded it, but so I wanted to get a picture of me doing what I do now, speak, and I use music because we ride this roller coaster of emotions when I'm speaking, and we cover a lot of topics. We talk about suicide, and we're laughing 1 second and singing, and because I want it to be very memorable for the audience.
Hmm.
So when I
Hmm.
incorporate music into it, that makes it a little maybe more different than other speakers, and
It's another layer, sure.
exactly. So they're looking at this guy, and I usually start out my keynote presentation with a song, and so they introduce me, and I come out onto the stage with my guitar, and they're looking at their looking at the programs like, who's this guy? And
Nice.
it says like, oh, he was a retired police chief, and watch got some built-in credibility, maybe or maybe not, but sometimes they're forced to be there, like their boss told them to be there, and
Yeah.
I don't remember what audience that one was, but they're all very similar in that they're sitting there, and like you said, it is a weird moment for 60 to 75 minutes. They're
Yep.
watching me, and like, what's he going to talk about? And so I approach those opportunities with reverence, because
Hmm.
these people are giving up 60 to 75 minutes of their day or afternoon or evening. And I don't want to drop the ball. I'm getting this golden opportunity to share some message that, again, like you and I had talked about, somewhere somebody might really need to hear that right now.
Yeah.
And so I approach each presentation, I approach each podcast interview with the same like mindset of I don't know what I need to hear today, and I don't know,
Yeah.
I just know that I've been given breath and I've been given a voice, and if I can say something or talk about something, and you're masterful at this, asking the questions and teasing that out of people. So hats off to you, my brother, for
Oh, thanks.
oh yeah, and your whole mission of this, of what did you say, 197 or
Oh, yeah. Episode, yeah.
yeah.
Episode 197. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's showing consistency. You're showing up, and you're doing it, and it's so with that in mind. So I wanted to get a picture of me speaking, because that's what's fueling me right now. I'm 57
Yeah.
years old, and I don't see an end to this. I mean, as long as I have breath in my body and I can croak out some words and play that
Hmm.
guitar, and music has another way of like looking at a photograph. You can hear a song that will instantly in your mind bring you back to the first time you heard it, your first love, your first heartbreak, whatever. And music has
Absolutely.
enormous power. And so I start out with an original song called "I Am, I Can, I Will." I am.
I love it. I love it.
And so then it's just, and then I just like tie it all in, but it's that power of the platform, we call it in speaking,
Mm.
that like, man, I don't want to squander this, and I don't want to
Yeah.
just hurt somebody with my words. I can hurt somebody a lot easier than I can help somebody, and
Yep.
so I'm very deliberate about my mission, my goal, and I want to help. I don't want to knock people down.
What is in the water that you're drinking?
It's
What's with
water, water.
Minnesota, man?
Yeah.
What is in Minnesota?
I don't know, man.
No, you have to talk about that. Sorry. You look, as a person who lives on the other side of the planet. I grew up in Montreal, right? Born in Jerusalem, born in Israel. But there's something really wholesome and so this is the whole thing of service, right? Service is the energy given at 3 feet. Like we say 1 yard away. It's like service is when you're in front of a person like Norman,
Mhm.
it's just like in that moment where you're just looking at each other, that energy between you two, that is a life changing service or a life changing moment, right?
Right.
And so in that audience, you're on stage and they say, okay, listen, buddy, you have an hour.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And you look at your life and you curate this story that you punctuate with song. And so talk about, so what is the was there a time when somebody from that audience came to you and looked at you, like you were their Norman. They looked at you in the eyes and you did something to them
Mhm.
that just moved moved their world,
Yeah.
right? So did you have a moment like that?
Every time. So after I've been doing professional speaking for about 6 years now, and after every presentation, at least one person, sometimes there's a line of people that come
Mm-hmm.
up and they just start, bleh, they just start
Yeah.
like dumping on me, and I love it, and I again
Mm-hmm.
I cherish that because that's telling me that I've been vulnerable,
Yep.
and I don't remember you mentioned it, but you see people, you have like a sensitivity, I think is the word you used
Yeah.
to when you see people. And somebody after one of my presentations came up and they told me, they said, you are an empath. And I'm like,
Right.
what now? And so I think, and I know my mom, she instilled that in me, and I think I got some of her DNA, obviously, but she was so good at seeing people, like seeing them, and
Yep.
and whatever it was about them, she could see if somebody was hurting, and she might not have
Mm-hmm.
known what the hurt was, but she had the ability to go up and start, like maybe they needed a hug or a little piece of food or something,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
uncanny. I watched her do that so many times, and I'm thankful that I have some of that in me. That when people come up afterwards, and then they'll start unloading on me these just like traumatic experiences, or like even,
Yeah. Yeah.
sir, I have to tell you, you've changed my life, and I'm like, who am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
Why are you
Amazing.
saying that? And but again, it's with humility, and I'm saying, "Oh my gosh," and so usually when I'm on the road and I'm speaking, and I get done speaking, it's emotional anyway, and people come up and they start unleashing, and after about 20 minutes of after everything's done, I'm out. I'm down for the count,
Right.
and I need to recharge, and that's where the
Yep.
introvert in me says, okay, get away from people for a couple hours, and but
Yeah.
it's the older I get, and hopefully as we age, we hopefully get wiser, and but the older I get, and hopefully the more wiser I become, I recognize that each one of us has been given a gift. 100% of us
Mm-hmm.
have some kind of a gift, and we need to share those gifts with somebody else, because squandering them and not sharing our gifts, whatever it is, if our gift is listening, if our gift is a joke, once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is, if we're not sharing those gifts, we're doing whoever gave or whatever gave us those gifts a disservice, and we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so that's kind of the mission I'm on. Not kind of, that is the mission I'm on right now, to kind of just be more bold about it, and but in
Mm-hmm.
a subtle way. I don't want to. I don't want to get preachy, and I don't feel like I am getting preachy. So I caution myself on that not everybody's going to have the same political or religious views, and honestly, I want to strip all that away, because none of it matters, and I want to get
Mm-hmm.
down to the way my mom did it, and when she would see somebody and she could see it in their eyes, or just the way they are carrying themselves, that this person's having a bad day. And when I'm in an airplane, and so when you give me your address, I am going to send you a book, and I'm going to send you one of my challenge coins. And
Okay.
so I'll be on an airplane, and I'll just say, how's your day going? And once in a while they'll be like awful, or they'll start
Yeah.
crying, and then
Yeah.
so then I give them a coin, and when they get a
Mm-hmm.
coin and they look at it and they're like, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever done to me.
Yeah.
Well, But again, it all goes back to my mom, and then
Yeah.
I'm sure her mom, and and because she got it from somewhere. And
Nice.
when you ask me what's in the water in Minnesota, I don't know that I haven't traveled enough to
Hmm.
know like what it's like in Hong Kong. I'd love to.
Right. Now, that do I remember her name? I'm really not great with names, but I had a fantastic guest on the podcast, and maybe she's from Minnesota for all I know. She would give out these nuggets of hope, right? So she'd find little pebbles, and then
Yeah,
she'd paint on them nugget of hope, and then she'd walk around the city, and she'd see somebody, and she'd be like, I don't know your story. I don't know what's going on in your life, but this is just for you. Just a little
yeah,
nugget of hope. And yeah, that could totally change a person's life.
yeah.
Tim, respect. I am, I can, I will. I mean, you are, you do, and you did. Like, well done, man.
Thank you,
Love
sir.
it.
Thank you.
Oh, this is so good. Look, it's been a real pleasure. See, already it's been an hour.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again. Thank you for your service, what you're doing. You're showing up. You're consistent. You're rocking it, man. Good job.
Thank you. Well, look, have a very good evening.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.
Oh, baby, I like